Oh, but what I was gonna say about your thoughts about consciousness, what I'm always on the lookout for, what I'm always concerned about as a wrong step in thinking about things and trying to come to useful insights is the impulse to preserve a very simple idea of something when it's threatened by the messiness of reality, by pushing it away, pushing the questions about it away. 25 years ago, in the early innocent days of fundamentalist Christianity's war on modern understanding, one of the most common attacks on the scientific approach, evolution, the Big Bang, all these things that contradict the Bible was, you don't have the answers. You said, the Big Bang happened. You don't know why. You don't know this. You don't know that. We know why. We have the answer. God did it. And it's like, okay, God did. How did he do it? He's God. He did it God's way. We can't possibly understand that. Oh, okay, well, where did God come from? Well, he didn't come from anywhere. He existed with literally nothing but him. Well, what was he? Well, we can't understand it. Okay, so you really don't have the answer, do you? No. All you've done is push the answer away, promised an answer somewhere where you'll never have to deliver, because no one in real life comes back from the dead. Near-death experiences are near death, not back from the dead experiences. And if they were, that would be kind of bad for Christianity as well. This idea that creationism somehow answers questions that science can't answer yet is a total fallacy. It just puts them off, and if you keep asking them, it eventually degenerates into, hey man, do you want to go to hell? And so when we think about consciousness, it's a total mystery. It's the essence of everything, because existence and time, everything else that is also mystery, is funneled through consciousness. I think we can all agree, we're all advanced enough to understand that what we perceive is integrally involved in everything we know. So, and I shouldn't have said perceive. What we are as a consciousness is integrally involved in everything that human beings have achieved and everything that we know. Science does not take us out of our humanity, although in some ways it takes us out of a primitive version of our humanity, a simplistic intellectualization of our humanity. It does that, but it doesn't make us into something other than humans. Not yet. And so when we think about consciousness, there are these mysteries. I mean, the idea of the soul or a ghost as an essential person, an essential you that is invisible and yet unified and untouchable in some way, is an idea that comes easily to the mind, because the alternative is to conceive of yourself as a process that just has no particular locale or solidity or lasting nature at all. That as Alan Watts said, a whirlpool. You're like a whirlpool. There's definitely, there's a whirlpool. You can see the shape, and it stays there for an awfully long time. The river has to, erode away, or the water has to dry up before the whirlpool goes away. It's got solidity within a certain time frame, and yet it's made of nothing. It's literally, it's a completely passing phenomenon of water and gravity and blah, 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 blah. I can tell this is going really, really long. And my feeling about consciousness is that if you start thinking about the substance of consciousness, you know, the specialness of neurons, or this some kind of solid but unobservable something about consciousness, you're pushing away the questions about consciousness rather than answering any of them. At this moment in history, based on my reading, I believe that consciousness is a process, and that it is a process that could go on in other forms than the human mind. But I don't know this for sure, and I don't know what the process is, and nobody can tell me. We know a hell of a lot about things that happen around the process. Like, for instance, you know, you get shot in the head, take a blow to the head, it can wipe out memories, it can change your personality. There are people who've sustained injuries where the people who knew them and loved them, will swear it's not the same person anymore. And yet that person can talk to you, and you're left with the unsettling question of, who am I talking to, if not the same person? And if you had met that person without knowing anything about the previous person, you would make assumptions about personhood based on what they are now. And this is true for all of us, with or without brain injuries. We started out as babies, with no memory, with no sense of self. So the consciousness is mysterious. It's as mysterious as the mystery of what the present is. If the present, it literally has no duration, what is it? And if consciousness has no location, if it literally is an echo chamber, I'm talking about stuff I don't understand. I'm trying to get at points that are hard to state in words, and I'm going long, I can tell. So I just among the points that I wanted to get at are, number one, if a consciousness is conscious of itself, what does that mean at all? And could it be that my consciousness, your consciousness, literally does not have a cardinality of one, but is in fact what if the consciousness that is conscious, that is self-conscious, is not everything it is conscious of? What if the self that is conscious of MetaBob, this aging body, this goofy beard, the need for glasses, the rapidly Swiss cheesing memories, the philosophical meanderings, the personality, so charming on YouTube and yet not all that successful in real life. What if all that stuff that MetaBob is conscious of is being perceived by a consciousness which literally has none of that, has no memories, has no intellect, has no personality, is not differentiated at all, because we don't know what consciousness is. We certainly don't understand it mechanically, and we don't even understand it. We only understand it by having it. The dreaded Alan Watts that I keep bringing up, he once proposed this game. I forget what he called it. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but essentially you look up pick a word at random in the dictionary, and then look up look up the definitions of every word that is used to define that word, and then look up the definitions of the words that define that word, and see how long it is until you cycle back to the word that you started with. You know, and yet words have meaning. It's a web. It's a fabric. It's a sleight of hand. Things moving so fast that you don't know they're in two different places. I don't know what I'm talking about. But what I worry about with your line of reasoning, which I'm not going to debate with you, is that I wonder if you're agnostic, but you're looking for reality. You're looking for what is. And when you start saying things like, the self must have a cardinality of 1, the consciousness must have a special stuff, that is separate from everything that science so far at least has been involved with, you're pushing away the questions rather than going after the answers, which is fine. Everybody gets to do whatever they want, but yeah, my feeling is, of all the unprovables at the moment, the one that, about consciousness, about the nature of beings, about the soul, the only one that really kind of intrigues me is the idea that at the base of consciousness is some element that is identical in all of us. And if you think enough about this, you begin to realize that we sort of have the gentleman's agreement again. We have a gentleman's agreement to kind of act as if that were so, but if the thought comes into our head, then it becomes problematic. And it's very problematic to me if by pondering this you begin to create a fantasy figure in your head and call it God and say, oh, definitely that's must really be there and all that. That's I'll never live my life that way. But nevertheless, it's certainly interesting, and unlike most atheists on YouTube, or at least most atheists who make their views known on YouTube, I don't care if I'm an atheist. It doesn't matter to me what I am or what my definition is. I'm being true to myself, what I know is what I know. What I think is what I think. So I reject a whole panoply of religious concepts based on my absolute certainty that they're internally inconsistent and serve no purpose and are kind of evil, without admitting it or without meaning to be. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. But I have no objection to finding amazing wonders in areas of the unknown. Good grief, why would I? But by the same token, I'm not gonna if I as John, was it John Donne, or who wrote Pilgrim's Progress? Was it Pilgrim's Progress? I'm totally lost. Oh, John Bunyan. Dost thou love picking meat, or wouldst thou see a man in the clouds and have him speak to thee? Yeah, I'd like to see a man in the clouds and have him speak to me. But I don't, I don't exactly have a problem with that just being an aspect of human wanting, as opposed to, an insistence on a literal thing. I I know this is a billion minutes long, and I really want to wrap it up, and I know that it's completely confused, and I have no time to edit, and I won't be able to make this all make sense. So I'm going to just jump in. Two things. Hans Moravec, book Robot. Robot, can anybody read that? I don't know, maybe. There it is. Robot, Hans Moravec. I discovered that online there is a piece of this book, his discussion of consciousness and existence and the nature of simulation versus reality and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to provide a link to it over there. But I'm also going to print out a specific piece of it that... hold on one second. Let me see if I can actually lay my... you brought up one of the ideas that I had that you said was sort of unfamiliar to you, which was, well, I forget how I said it, and I forget how you said I said it. But here's Moravec basically saying the same thing, I think. There is no content or meaning without selection. And this is an idea that I was, again, first introduced to by Alan Watts, although, you know, a bunch of physicists could have told me it much sooner. You know, if you know everything, you know nothing. You have to pick and choose before you can say you know anything, because you've got to have something to compare something else to, and you have to set limits on what you know for what you know to be in any sense true, because they're anyway. I'm not even going to go on, but I'm gonna put that. I'm going to copy that out into the description because I think it's quite interesting and better if you read it than if you hear me say it. But the last thing, you know, it drives me nuts about the atheist community on YouTube that my big bone to pick with the atheist community is I really do feel that at least that the vast majority of the atheists who make themselves known on YouTube are still trying to drag themselves free of some kind of fundamentalist Christian tradition, that they're still at war with a kind of identity that if they really got free of it would their personalities would change radically, and in a sense I think they're trying to hold on to their old Christian personalities at the same time as they rebel against the nonsense. And what a lot of them have not realized yet is that they're going to change if they really get free of those nonsensical Christian ideas. And let's face it, the vast majority of the YouTube atheists who are trying to get free of something are trying to get free of Christianity. And one of the things, one of the tells of this conflict is the endless debates about definition and the clinging to the dictionary or the encyclopedia. You know, you've got your Bible, I've got my encyclopedia. According to the encyclopedia, I cannot be this because the encyclopedia says I am that. You know, science says this because it's here, it's written down. This obsession with the word, the definitive, true definition, true this, true that, and you know, and one of the more hilarious versions of this to me is just that it's like the atheist debate, and the Christians all have more or less run away from the YouTube atheists. They're not even trying to debate. Most of them aren't, and so the debate ends up getting down to who has faith and who has belief, and these arguments over the nature of the words, and you know, oh well, I'm not only an atheist, but I have no belief or faith. I have no faith. Faith is blah 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 blah. And why do I say that? Because the dictionary tells me so, etc., 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 etc. And the word faith, it just kind of caught me off guard when I got to YouTube and heard all the people just going on about, you know, oh, faith is the enemy. Faith is the linchpin of theism, and therefore, you know, blah blah blah. And we can't have faith. If we have faith, why we're no better than theists? and all this kind of crap. And I'm kind of going, really? Really? Is that word going to do it for everybody? And then as I was looking for Alan Watts stuff to read and all this, I landed on this quote from Alan Watts, which I guess I had read because I read the book that it came from, but I had forgotten it because I'm not really very anal about words. I want to be more precise than I am, but at the same time, it's not my way. But anyway, he was talking about faith. You know, the sad fact, if you love the dictionary as your bulwark against confusion and chaos, the sad fact is everyone's got their definition. And this was Alan Watts talking about faith. Faith is a state of openness or trust. To have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you will sink and drown. Instead, you relax and float. And the attitude of faith is the very opposite of clinging to belief, of holding on. In other words, a person who is fanatic in matters of religion and clings to certain ideas about the nature of God and the universe becomes a person who I'm going to say that over because I fucked it up and it's fairly important. And the attitude of faith is the very opposite of clinging to belief, of holding on. In other words, a person who is fanatic in matters of religion and clings to certain ideas about the nature of God and the universe becomes a person who has no faith at all. Instead, they are holding tight. But the attitude of faith is to let go and become open to truth, whatever it might turn out to be. And by that definition, I have faith. It's the linchpin of my atheism. You know? Because my atheism didn't start with Darwin. It doesn't depend on Darwin. There are plenty of believers, smart believers, who completely accept evolution. It's not integral. You know, I mean, I will defend evolution against all comers because all comers at this point are idiots. But you know, it's not that my atheism doesn't come from that. My atheism comes from a faith that if I see that this religious idea is nonsensical, that it is self-contradictory, and that by any standard that I can come up with in my human existence is evil, because the idea of a God that damns people to hell, especially under the circumstances that are put forward in most of the religions that believe in this, is an evil idea. It's a human idea, but it's an evil idea, I believe. And I have faith that that this idea is wrong, and that if it's right, that the essence of it being right would be that somehow I'm so completely wrong that God really can be all good, and that this is an expression of a moral system. I have faith that if through some bizarre set of circumstances this could in any way be true, that God is all good, whatever that might mean in this upside down, backwards context, and that if I were to end up burning in hell, that this would somehow be a good thing. In other words, Christianity, and I'll just use Christianity, has been presented to me as a moral system, not as some kind of crafty late-night infomercial for getting rich at other people's expense. It's not, they keep saying, about, you know, greed for pleasure and fear of pain. It's moral. It's about loving God. And I'm willing to take that much as being a precondition of anything they say being true, and of me not knowing. Because again, you know, it comes down to people saying, well, you know in your heart we're right. No, actually I don't. I know in my heart you're wrong. Well, you're gonna convert on your deathbed. Well, who knows? How can I know myself that far in advance? But I really don't think so. There's nothing to convert to. I genuinely, in my heart, see that this is an immoral, childish, a system of trauma, a system built up from a bedrock of traumatized children in some early point in human culture where everything about human culture was traumatic and awful and fearful. You know, it's the kind of hope that only a twisted, damaged soul could come up with as hope. Which doesn't mean that the people who believe it are all bad by any stretch of the imagination. But that's for another blog, because I know this is going to be my longest ever. And I have actually deviated from the whole Blue Adept thing. Blue, I'm coming back to you here. You as far as I know, you're not pushing a Christian agenda, so what am I talking about, right? Maybe I'll even cut this out, or maybe I won't. It all depends on how long it is. Jesus Christ. This is really long. I think I'm just going to torture people by putting the whole fucking thing up. Maybe. Anyway, cheerio. The sign of the ascended. This is my new symbol, the sign of the ascendant nobody.